Good morning. Ooh, I can feel the enthusiasm in the room. That's very good. So again, my name is Kristian and I work for Statoil. I'm heading up the strategy team in one of our business areas called Development Production International. Elisabeth, where are you? Yeah. Kristian, thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited to be here. Holger, good to see you again. Actually, one of the things that I was thinking about this morning is that some of the illustrations you will see I have actually looks like Holger's. So I don't know where you know. Yeah. Okay, what we're going to do today is, or what I'm going to try to do is to share some experiences with you guys on how we work and drive a deep strategy process in one of our business areas. I think I can actually state that we do it in a different way than other parts of Statoil, because we lean to some principles that you have heard Kristian talk about, but also some out-of-the-box thinking in terms of how we engage our wider organization. So on that note, I just want you to, for those of you that are not familiar with Statoil as a company, just show you a quick 2-minute video that kind of puts the company.
Just like any other fairy tale. Once upon a time. The year was 1972 and Statoil was founded on optimism. Little did we know back then that by 2001 we would have become a publicly listed company, and 10 years later, well on our way to becoming a global energy player. By 1974, we had made our first footprint by discovering Statoil in the North Sea. And as the journey continued up the coast of Norway, we discovered the only troll this adventure has to offer. 40 years into the future, the Norwegian continental shelf has proven its value, and with recent discoveries has confirmed it will continue to do so for decades to come. Our ability to develop and apply technology has been challenged by the Norwegian continental shelf nature. It was the harsh conditions we faced every day that made us into one of the absolute front runners in applying new technology. From Norway, we searched for new horizons, and we have found them. The Peregrino field in Brazil adds to our list of operatorships. And by the time we had merged with Hydro, we'd become the #1 offshore operator in the world. Our strengths and our future are technology-focused, and gradually we have shaped our profile as an upstream energy player. Through global exploration like the Skrugard and Johan Sverdrup discoveries at the Norwegian continental shelf, the Peregrino South in Brazil, and early moves into unconventional resources in North America, future steps are taken, representing the same old optimisms we were founded on. For 10 years, we have delivered sector-leading shareholder return through developing a sustainable and values-based business and culture, telling us that how we work is of key importance to the goals we achieve. This is our story, and it has just begun.
Okay. So, one of the things that I want to start with is actually a quote from one of my heroes. And his name is Peter Senge, and he's written a book called The Fifth Discipline. And this book is all about how you engage a wider organization to actually confront change, but also deal and handle change. What he says in one of the quotes in his book is actually, it goes like this: "The greatest enemy of learning is the fear of not looking good." Okay, think about that also in related to strategy. We see very often when we work with strategy within our business areas that some of our executives and leaders find strategy very difficult. And one of the things that I tend to say to my colleagues is that the strategy needs to be uncomfortable, because if it's not, it's probably not a strategy. And that's one of the things that we have actually worked quite a lot with our managers to help them understand. When we, as a team of 3-4 people, We support our top executives in one of the business areas, helping them to translate the corporate strategy into actionable initiatives that we can apply across the world. Over the last year, where we have supported our teams, we have worked quite extensively on helping our leaders to really step out of a kind of common framework of strategy. So away from bookshelves of very big documents to actually simplify strategic messages and translate it into actions. So basically what we try to do, and I think we've been fairly successful in only a year, is to walk away from rigid, deep analysis of a situation or a position, and then move into discussions on what we want to achieve, rather than what was back here in history. Look at this little quote. I think it's a fantastic quote from a poet, an English poet. And the main point from this quote here is also something about mindset when you work with strategy. And look at the last part of the quote in particular, where we talk about where he says that people needs to dream about things that never happened or never were. And this is also something that is very applicable for any part of the business that we work within. Even though we are very focused on operational issues, we facilitate leaders to dream about changes that they can do that are minor, small, but still they are dreams. And that is a very important kind of cornerstone of how we work with strategy. Meaning also that my team of professionals have maybe a different profile than strategists normally have. I have a team of great facilitators. I have a team of great diversity with understanding of different cultures. But the most important skill set that my team has is that they can connect with people. So that connection and being able to have conversations with our leaders is, it's really, really essential. One little concept that we have introduced to our business area is what we call what-if games. So instead of kind of describing this as very complex scenarios, for example, all of you have probably heard about scenario planning as part of strategy. We ask simply what-if questions to our leaders to really help them think out of the box and think about different kind of futures that could possibly happen. Next week we're going to have a strategy day with our top management team in London. And the whole workshop, which is going to last for 2 days, is all about one what-if question. And it's going to be very interesting to see how that evolves. Just to give you also a few comments on the context that we are facing as an industry, but also the strategic challenges that we are facing as a business area. I think that's fair to say that, as you, Kristian, alluded to, there are some fundamental challenges within the oil and gas industry. One key challenge within our industry, but also for us as a company, is that we spend too much money and get too little back into the bank, to put it very simply. So we have extremely expensive and high capital-intensive projects that doesn't necessarily bring the revenue back that we want. And that is a big, big challenge for an industry that has traditionally been hunting for volumes of what we can produce rather than the value we bring back to our shareholders. So that is a completely shift that we will see within this industry going forward. For Statoil and also for our business area, we are of course currently responding to these challenges. And one of the first responses that you automatically will do as a big company, or any company, is that you will start to look at the efficiency of your organization. And that's the starting point. That's where we start. It's kind of dull, it's kind of boring, but it is also necessary to actually do it. On that line of activities and initiatives coming along, we also see now a growing or an emerging number of projects that are more innovative in terms of how we actually work, how we operate across countries, across business areas, that is very, very different from what we used to do back in history. To give you some more specifics on how we work on strategy and strategy development in Development and Production International, our business area. One of the things that became very evident for our management team back in, I think it was in December 2012, was that we needed to take a fresh look at how we kind of define our strategy. We did a test as a strategy team. We went out into our organization and asked, so what is the strategy? And we hoped for, of course, that people would be very clear on some of the strategic focus areas that we had. But the truth is, sadly, that we got a wide variety of answers, meaning that we were facing an organization that were not aligned at all. Meaning also that we had a lot of kind of energy that went into areas that we didn't want the energy to be focused on. So the first thing that we had to do was to work very intimately with our top executives to help them define a strategic intent of our business area. So what is the really, the very essence of our being? Why are we here? And what are we actually trying to achieve? And that actually sounds like a very simple and quick kind of fix conversation to have with the management team, but we spent, I think, maybe 3 months with the team to get that message across the whole team, but also the whole team aligned around that simple kind of ambition statement. Because what normally happens is that if you do this too quickly, and that is also a learning, is that you kind of produce a vision statement or an ambition statement in a workshop, and then you assume that everyone has the same understanding of what that means. And then suddenly the leaders run around in the world and they start telling stories, and it's actually not the same story. So we had to practice storytelling around the ambition statement. When that was done, which was actually the hardest part of the revitalization process of our strategy, then these strategic initiatives and focus areas came naturally after that. Also in workshops, also doing things in different ways. I think I can actually, when I think about it, we have not during 2013 used one single slide in our strategy process. And I'm very proud about that because it has been all about conversations, all about engagement, all about deep conversations around what is important for our business area. So what this illustration actually demonstrates is another very important learning from us is on the left side. You will see that we spent quite a lot of time building commitment and ownership with our top executive team. Most processes that I've seen in other companies stops there actually. But what we wanted to do was to create something that shaped the future for our employees as well. So we decided to communicate and develop a strategic framework for our business area, which is very different than a descriptive strategy. So the framework that we produced together with both the management team, but also the wider part of the organization, consists of some principles that everyone can relate to. It's a kind of almost like a field where people can kind of play seriously with strategy within. So this strategic framework functions in such a way that, for example, the leadership team in Tanzania use the framework to establish their local operational strategy for how to develop that asset, right? And that has been very successful because it leads to a very powerful thing, and that is that leaders out there in the organization feel that they have an ownership to their local business, and they have some frames that they can relate to, and that's been kind of the key work for us. Having had this framework in place for 6 months with an organization that is kind of distributed pretty, a lot of places in the world, I had an assumption that, within 3-4 months, this will be kind of all well known across the world, and it isn't. So my strategy team now is actually traveling the world and working very deeply and intimately with different leadership teams to really understand the framework so that we can continue to build robust local strategies. So I just wanted to share with you some, actually 5 points, 5, I've called it beliefs, I've called it also guiding principles for us on how we have and how we work with strategy. I think those are actually quite valid and quite, you can use them across any industry, I think. These are really key success factors for us as at least, and they are based on lessons learned in how and when we drive a strategy process. First point I've called dynamic business at heart. And what does that mean? Well, it means that, and it kind of goes back a little bit to Kristian's point in his introduction, that we can never really foresee what's going to happen tomorrow or in 6 months or in a year. Everything is actually quite dynamic and you have to handle it. So meaning that the target that you set today might actually change. And that realization is really important to get into the strategy process. Every conversations that we have had with our leaders starts with a business outcome. We start with a question around what do you actually want to achieve and how is this relevant for the business that you are leading. That is kind of the starting point for everything. We have to do that because we need to be present in very many different areas of the globe, and we need to have ears on the ground. So that means that our local people are the ones that really knows the key strategic challenges the best. So this first point is all about acknowledging that there will be changes to the objectives that we set out. It's acknowledging that our job is actually to facilitate discussions with management so that they can make sound strategic choices and stick to them, but also be very uncomfortable with those choices, and that's fine. And then also help our leaders to be more focused. The second key success factor or learning point for us is that driving a deep strategy process around these principles where you really want to focus on engagement and kind of getting all the potential out of your organization, it actually means that you need a team of professionals to do it. And one key skill to actually drive such a process is to be a great facilitator, to engage a group of people so that they can do the talking and not you. I have never presented, our strategy to our top executives. That's not my job. My job is to help them to present it and to be comfortable with it and to be very focused on the leadership messages that they convey to the rest of the organization. We spend in our team, we have every week a 3-hour meeting. That meeting is very different. It's not a reporting meeting. It's a meeting where we have what I called after action reviews. We talk about what has happened over the last week, and we kind of drill down to make sure that we can capture key learnings from that journey that we've been on since the last week. We also focus on, in that meeting, what's going to happen over the next few weeks so that we are prepared for the job that we are expected to do. So we also spend a substantial amount of time on our internal development program. It doesn't mean that we hire Kristian for everything. He has supported us a little bit, but we also do quite a lot of the learning ourselves. I tend to set up my team with in pairs, for example, making sure that 2 of my professionals goes out and support in a project together so that they can learn from each other. So that's extremely important. Another thing is that I have never fallen for the temptation to build a strategy empire in our business area, which I could easily have done that. I could have, attracted a lot of people, and I could have my analysts and my finance and control people and all that stuff. But I have never fallen for that temptation. But what I have done is that I have reached out to all the professionals in Statoil that can help us. And we have made extended teams and several other teams. And for some, it's quite confusing. But for me, it's actually quite a lot of fun, because we tend to draw on the best expertise that we have in our company to deliver what our management team expects from us. Third point, experimenting. Well, I think you all kind of know what that is all about. It's actually about stepping out of the comfort zone, trying new methodologies, trying new tools, not being afraid of or scared of actually going into a strategy discussion with a completely different framework. We've done that quite often, and I actually have a back office objective for my team, and that is that I want us to constructively surprise our leaders every time we work with them. Meaning that when we go into a meeting, they're never going to be very, certain what's going to happen. and I think that's really important, because then we keep conversations on the edge and focused, and we also actively help our leaders to be comfortable of being outside their comfort zone. Also, as I talked about in the beginning, this is where we decided to kind of introduce the what-if game, which is actually quite energizing. It's extremely focused, and it helps and kind of gives our leaders and people an opportunity to talk about a future that doesn't really exist, and maybe it's unrealistic that it will happen, but still you have those discussions and you can make stronger and better strategic choices. For example, so far, in Statoil, we have been blessed. We have not so far seen what is a kind of global trend, which is an overspend on big projects and also at extreme time delays. We haven't seen that yet, but that might happen, right? So what we're going to do, or what we have done several times, is to look at our portfolio of projects, and then we have said, what if, right? What if 20% of our projects get a cost overrun of 30%? What do we do? How can we make robust decisions now to prevent that from happening? It's a completely different discussion, and it helps us to be more forward-leaning. 4, that's all about on your feet. So what we also try to do when we work with strategy is to get out of the normal kind of conference room setting. Anyone have walked into a leadership team meeting? Here? No? So you come into a room typically, you have a big conference room, everyone sits around the table, they are focused on maybe their own things, maybe they're even preparing their presentation while you talk and all that stuff. We try to avoid that. We try to, when we have those meetings, to get people on their feet. Use the walls, use stickies, use statis, use whatever you can to have other types of conversations. What is our learning about that is that if you just go into a room and do that without preparing a team, they're going to be very scared about that. So you have to prepare people to those kind of conversations, and we've done that individually, but also in teams, giving them a little bit, and now it's working fairly well. Last. And this actually leads me into the last guiding principle, which is all about engagement and passion. If you kind of have processes or ways of working with strategy where you touch people's heart, then you are in a very good spot. Because then people start to talk about their business and their jobs with passion, and they start to kind of really be more engaged into what they really want to achieve as individuals, but also as teams. This is a huge challenge, because not every leader that we have in Statoil are great at engaging their people. meaning that, and also at the same time, when we know for a fact from all studies that if you are going to really convey a strategic message, you need to have leaders that stand up and really tell that story. So we also have to, at the same time, educate and help our leaders to be comfortable with taking such a role. So with that, just a couple of closing notes. As facilitators and advisors, I think we have to view strategy as uncomfortable and kind of deal with that. We need to look at strategy processes that's all about making choices, and it's all about engaging a wider part of your organization. And last but not least, a good strategy process starts with being very focused on your strategic intent. Why are you here and what are you trying to achieve? So with that, thank you.